And welcome to the December meeting of the ACAP, Adult Children of Aging Parents meeting. My name is Ruth Finch. I am co-chair, and our fabulous team is here tonight with us in their green shirts. They look great. And if you haven't been with us before, ACAP is a support group for caregivers. Although the topics that we talk about are relevant to all individuals, everyone in the family. So we are happy to have tonight a special program for you. The most important thing that I will say is where the restrooms are tonight. So if you exit this room, take a right and go to the desk and go straight past the desk. The restrooms are on your right. And there are cards on the table tonight. It's a contact card to be added to the mailing list if you'd like to be receiving our information. We also have a program feedback form that we will ask you to complete at the end of the night. And then we have our educational program schedule for January to March of 2023 available for everyone to take home. All of that information about the programs can also be found online, our website. So tonight's sponsor for our program is Griswold Home Care, and Dorothy Griffin is going to come talk to us briefly about Griswold.
Thank you all for coming, and thank you to those that are watching us online. My name is Dorothy Griffin, and I'm with Griswold Home Care here in Wilmington, North Carolina. My husband and I started Griswold about 10 years ago in this area. And what I would want you to know as adult children of aging parents is that home care can allow you the freedom to be the child and not be in that caregiver role all of the time. So that's one of the gifts that we give to the families we work with. I would also say the main thing that our clients appreciate about home care is it allows them to stay in the place that they most want to stay. When you ask most seniors, what's your hope for aging? They say, I really, really want to stay in my home. And so one of my favorite examples is a couple that she was able to, mentally take care of everything, and he was able to physically help. And then when she had some issues occur, they weren't in that place anymore. And yet both of them so wanted to stay in their own home. They didn't have any family in the area. And a lot of the professionals thought there just wasn't any option for them to stay in their home. And so with Griswold, we were able to help them stay all the way until their final days for both of them. And so that's what I love doing, is giving them that freedom. So if you have an aging parent that you are looking for some extra care for, we would love to work with you and help serve you in that way. And we have some information on the blue table there, and help yourself to a treat bag and a tote bag to take home. And let me know if you have any questions about it. Turn it back over to Ruth.
Thank you, Dorothy. So I have the privilege tonight of introducing our speaker, Ms. Julie Foster. Julie is a native of Alamance County, North Carolina, but she's lived in Brunswick County since 2018. She's a graduate of Duke University and is a nationally certified dementia care professional. She's worked with the geriatric adult specialty team, GAS Services, for 15 years, and she's married to Stephen, and they parent to 2 adult children and 1 grandson. And Julie is described as a seasoned trainer, selfless, a go-getter, whose favorite saying is, "There's a lesson in everything, so pay attention." She chooses optimism in her approach to life's challenges, as summed up in John Hyatt's song, "You can live in fear or act in hope." And tonight she is going to present for us When the Golden Years Aren't Golden: Anxiety, Depression, and Aging. Julie?
Thank y'all. That whole thing about living in fear and acting in hope, I'm feeling it right now. I'm a little nervous about the camera and the broadcast, but we're going to get through this together. It's okay. I'm not very technologically inclined, in case you can decide. That's it. So what we're going to talk a little bit, whoops, that's it here. That's right. There we go. What I want to say first off is I am very Southern, and I have a very thick Southern accent. So if I say something and you're like, what just came out of her mouth? Stop me and say it again. Also, I'm very, very informal. So if you've got a question, stop and ask it. I would rather address it then while we're sort of in the groove than to try to come back and remember where we were. What we're going to talk a little bit about today is specifically depression and anxiety. But what I want to leave with you guys, we need to focus on the four big disorders. Dementia, delirium, anxiety, and depression are the four most prevalent mental health disorders in the elderly. Now, as I said, we're going to focus on depression and anxiety, but I think we would be remiss to not just touch on dementia and not just touch on delirium. Want to start out, even though it says delirium, want to start out with dementia. Y'all know that dementia is a progressive loss of functioning. People sort of travel back in time. The very first symptom often is memory issues, and people sort of lose their most recent memories and travel backwards in time. It is a progressive disease. It is a terminal disease. Someone is not going to wake up one day and have dementia. And that's what I want to leave with you in these first couple of slides. If someone has, your loved one is at their baseline, they go to sleep at night, you come in the next morning to wake them up, and you can't arouse them. There's a marked difference. That's not dementia. That's delirium. Delirium is a medical emergency, and it's marked by that disturbance in consciousness and cognition. You'll have a difficulty arousing them. You'll have difficulty keeping their attention. You'll have difficulty getting them to focus. They're very disoriented as far as time and place. They may have speech issues. They may misinterpret the world around them or have hallucinations. It develops over a short time. So what I want to leave you with is, as I said, if it happens quickly, often less than 24 hours, there's something going on. There's something medical going on. It's time to either get them to a doctor or to call 911 and get them to an urgent appointment. Delirium is often caused by medical conditions or substances. So side effects are huge. Medication side effects are huge. Often our seniors are on lots and lots of medication. And the more medications we take, the more of a chance there are for interactions. Other things that can cause delirium: fevers and infections, substances, dehydration, vitamin deficiencies, malnutrition. The most common one that we often think about is urinary tract infections. Just know that if it comes on quickly, it's more than likely it's delirium, and we need to get them to a physician. As it says here, memory impairment is common in both, but the person who has just dementia is going to be alert. They're going to be able to interact with you. They may not make sense. They may not know what day it is, where they are, but they're going to be able to interact with you. If you can't get that interaction, if they don't have that level of consciousness, then more than likely it's delirium. Notice at the bottom, it is a medical emergency. This is not something to fool around with. We need to get people in and get them seen quickly. Often it can be reversed. You know, a urinary tract infection is fairly easy to treat if we catch it in time. And once we start people on medications, but we have to catch it early and we have to get medical attention. So that's what I want to leave you with, is that delirium is a medical emergency. And if it comes on quickly, then we need to act. Any questions about that? All right. So let's talk about depression. As I was planning for this, every time I see this slide, I want to change it, because Depression, it is not a normal part of aging. I did this the other day, and someone suggested that perhaps it should be inevitable. The word should be inevitable. Depression is not an inevitable part of aging. We know that people, I'm sure you know people well into their 80s and 90s who are able to learn new skills, to do new things, who are productive, who volunteer, active in their communities. What happens, though, as we age is there are more events that can trigger depressive episodes. We have more losses. We have more health issues. We have more financial problems. We have more stressors. Those stressors, though, don't automatically translate into depression. Depression is a medical disorder. We know what causes it. It is caused by chemical imbalances in our brain. And the way that these disorders are treated is by taking medications that help regulate the amount of these chemicals that are in our brain. It's no different than diabetes. We take insulin to regulate our diabetes. We take antidepressants to regulate the serotonin that our brain produces. So it's all the same thing. It's real important to remember that. I know you know that, but so often, because you can't take an x-ray and diagnose someone with depression. You can't see the depression bone that you break in your arm and say, oh, there it is. They've got depression. It's called a soft disorder. You know, there are symptoms, but it's not like you have a tumor. It's not like you have something that is very easily identified. And people think that it's not a real medical disorder. It very much is. And if we treat it like a medical disorder, just like we do diabetes, just like we do heart disease, then the chances of symptom remission are greater. Now, I know y'all know these. The symptoms of depression, I like to call it the helpless, hopeless, worthless. I think that everybody tends to think of sadness. And we think when we talk about people who have depression, we think that there are people who sit in the room all day and cry. And there is a part of that. And some people do that. But often it's other things. Often it is, I'm just so tired. Life's just so hard. Sometimes it doesn't matter what I do. It just keeps going. I try so hard and I just can't get ahead. No one's here. No one knows what I feel like. Helpless, hopeless, worthless. Notice at the bottom there, agitation. Often in the elderly, and in particularly elders who have cognitive issues like dementia, it can show up as agitation. I am not a physician. I am not a nurse. I'm a social worker. My take on things is if you're seeing unexplained agitation for whatever reason, let's get a medical evaluation. Let's rule out the medical things first, because that's not what I do. I'm not a medical person. I can't diagnose you, but I can take you to someone who can. I can follow up with a physician. So if you're seeing, particularly this agitation piece, it could be from pain. It could be from life events. It could be that they're unhappy and really are feeling a little blue. It could be something as simple as being too hot or too cold or unhappy with a life event. There's all kinds of things that can cause that. Have those symptoms checked out by a physician. What puts us at risk for depression? Notice genetics and gender. Women or men, who has more depression? Women. Any idea why?
Does that have to do with men?
Because we have to put up with y'all. That's funny. That's funny. Well, I think there's a couple of thoughts on this. If you look around this room, thank you to the two gentlemen who showed up, Who are three? I'm sorry. Forgot you back there. In our society, who generally are the caretakers? When a child gets sick at school, who gets the phone call? The mama. When something goes wrong, generally women tend to be the caregivers in Western. That's just the way it is. But there's also perhaps a biological component to that. What do women have that men don't have? Estrogen. Estrogen. I thought I better qualify that. We might get all kinds of answers we don't want. Women have estrogen, and there are studies that show that both for anxiety and depression, that the rates are kind of the same as we're muddling through adolescence and childhood and adolescence until we get about to puberty. And after that, women tend to have a higher incidence of depression. There's also, we know hormonal issues can cause postpartum depression. And so it seems to be related to that. Genetics. We know that any mental health disorder, anything, if you have a first-degree relative, which is a mother, father, brother, sister, son, or daughter, that has a mental health disorder themselves, you are more likely to have it as well. And it doesn't matter whether we're talking about schizophrenia or whether we're talking about depression. Things tend to run in families, just like diabetes runs in families, just like heart disease runs in families. There's a correlation between heart issues and depression, chronic illness and depression. Am I moving too much? No. We know that certain medications can trigger depressive episodes. Things like steroids, narcotic pain medications. We also know, I mentioned postpartum depression. If you have depression, tends to be one of those disorders that you can have relapses. It can show up again. And I mentioned postpartum depression, but even just the garden variety type of depression. If you have an issue with depression at some point in your life and recover from that, then you're more likely at some point later in life for that to reoccur. Other things, thinking about, mobility. If you're stuck and you can't go anywhere, you can't get out, that's a stressor. You're isolated. We know through the pandemic that social isolation, excuse me, that social isolation was a major factor with our older adults. They were cut off. People did not do well. Separation and losses. Losses are not just a death. This is a retirement community. People come here to retire. But by virtue of coming here to retire, that means you've left something at home. And often we see that people come here and that this is their dream, to live at the beach and retire. And then someone gets sick and you realize that you're 1,600 miles from your closest family member. You move down here and you think it's going to be wonderful, and it is. I'm one of those people who moved down here, and it really is wonderful. But you realize that you've given up your home church, and you've given up you can't have lunch with your best friend like you used to. And the garden club that you were so involved in, you haven't been able to make that connection down here. So the losses are not just deaths. Even the loss of status. People need something to do. People need something to feel useful. And often that's one of those losses that we have as we age. There we go. Oh, went too far. I think I'm going the wrong way, am I? There we go. All right. Now I'm stuck again. Here we go. I promise.
But communicating with that computer, getting it towards the computer, right?
But it didn't change. There we go. Just want to leave you with this idea about depression. Late life depression can be deadly. When we talk about suicide, we often think of younger people. That tends to be the group that's sensationalized. It's, oh my God, I could never imagine. How could someone in the prime of their life do that? And you hear, and they're gut-wrenching stories. They're always gut-wrenching stories. So people assume, because we hear all of this about young people ending their life by suicide, that's the group that's most likely to do the act. It is not. The elderly have almost twice the rate of suicide of any other group. Elderly Caucasian men, highest rate. Then it's elderly African American men, and it's women, white women and Black women. Women are more likely to attempt suicide. Men are more likely to complete the act. Anyone know why that is? Men use more lethal weapons, absolutely. There's also this, in caregiving, sometimes you see this or you hear about this, silent suicide or passive suicide, where people start refusing meds and start refusing to eat and start doing some behaviors that sort of raise questions in the back of your mind, like giving away possessions or talking about death, but kind of talking about death in a specific way. It's not that I know it's coming. It's often I wish I wasn't such a burden. I sure do wish you didn't have to take care of me. I hate that I'll be so glad when my God just calls me on home. Also, another thing that y'all probably may know this, but often in people with dementia, when they start talking about their parents, mama, that's who they felt safe with. And that's often a safety issue. But sometimes they'll say things like, I just want to go home to my mama. I just want to go see I've waited. I'm ready. I'm ready for them just to take me on. When I say the words, it doesn't sound that lethal coming out of my mouth, and it may not sound that lethal coming out of your loved one's mouth. Just know that those may be sort of veiled suicidal ideation things. Ask the question, are you going to hurt yourself? Ask those questions. It's not going to make someone do that if they don't already sort of have that in motion. Ask if they have a plan. The more specific they are about how they would do it and what they are thinking about, ups the danger level. So you want to ask those questions. And if you have any indication, any idea that something's amiss here, get them in to see a doctor. Get them in to see your physician. Any questions? I mentioned, we talked earlier just briefly about dementia, depression. This is just sort of a comparison between the two. Notice dementia, I said it's a very slow progressive disease. Slow. Average lifespan, 8 to 10 years from the time you're diagnosed. Depression, that middle decline is pretty rapid. In dementia, people become confused and disoriented. They get lost. People who are suffering from depression, they know where they are. They know what time it is. They know the date. The memory issues. Notice that a person who has dementia doesn't think they have memory issues. A person who has dementia worries about their memory. So that's sort of a sign is if you're kind of worried about your memory, maybe you don't have dementia. I don't know. If you know enough to know that you're having memory issues, maybe you don't have it. But the difference is sort of that level of consciousness and that level of awareness of what's going on. Okay, there we go. In the elderly, a depressed mood may present as an irritable mood. That's what I was talking about earlier. Thinking about what we know about dementia, someone who can't verbalize what's bothering them. And then we come in and try to do stuff to them. That can lead to one of those catastrophic relationships or instances where they reach around and slap you, or get out of my room, or whatever that sort of thing is. Often anxiety is sort of co-occurring with depression. We're going to talk about anxiety here in just a second. Often there's lots of physical complaints too, and particularly with anxiety, which we're going to get to in a minute. That's sort of one of the telling signs sometimes, is a person may have all these physical issues, and they run all these tests and they rule out everything, and they can't, there's nothing there. And then you're sort of faced with, well, what could be causing it? And what could be causing it is anxiety or depression. It mentions psychosis. Just know that people may say things, or may see things, may remark upon things that we know are not true, and we don't experience like they do. Correcting someone is often going to cause one of those catastrophic instances, just like I mentioned. So sometimes it's better to just sort of go with what they're telling you. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to buy into it. But one of the things that I often say is, well, I don't see that, but I understand that you do. I don't hear your husband's voice, but I understand that you do. Can you tell me about him? And then go to another topic that's a little less distressing. Keep it all the place. I'm not doing something right. I know I'm not. There we go. So some of the things that can cause depression in older adults. Health problems, obviously. Any illness or disability that sort of limits a person's ability to interact with others, whether it be mobility, whether it be a cognitive decline, chronic pain. We saw during the pandemic what isolation and loneliness can do for people, not just for the elderly. We saw it sort of across the board. We saw it in children. We struggled with it ourselves. Our elderly really were, even, I think often about the people that are in facilities who may or may not have even understood what was going on. And then suddenly nothing is familiar. No one that they know is there, and how hard that must have been. I mentioned earlier, I said that everybody needs a sense of purpose. Everybody needs to feel that they are needed and wanted and belong and can contribute. And often the message that goes out to our seniors is that you don't matter. We don't need you. Oh, we don't even mean to do it. But don't even worry about it. I'll take care of that. You're retired. You don't worry about that. Don't even worry about that. I'll do it. People need a sense of purpose. Bereavement when we're talking about loss, as we age, there are more and more losses. That's just the reality of living, is the longer you live, the more losses you encounter. Once again, a loss does not have to mean a death, does not have to mean a death of a person. Don't underestimate pets. People are so attached to animals, and particularly an elder person who's living alone, a pet may be the most important thing in their life. So losses are very important in understanding depression. Okay, I've gone too far. Let's talk a little bit now about anxiety, unless you have questions specifically about depression. Okay. Anxiety, they're very similar. The symptoms are very similar. The feelings are very similar. The risk factors are very similar, as you see. Come on. We know that women are more likely than men. Persons of lower socioeconomic status, that just sort of follows. If you don't have resources, you don't have things to help you get through the depression or the anxiety. People who have More resources are able to go to the doctor, are able to join support groups, are able to travel. They have transportation and can get back and forth to various supports. I mentioned family history, and the family history and gender, it's the same issues as we talked about earlier with depression. If you have a coexisting mental health disorder, you're more likely to have another one. So depression and anxiety go hand in hand. Dementia and depression often go hand in hand. Having one thing makes you more likely to have something else. There's another one. The last one was frequent changes. And you think about, we're not even going to deal with it anymore. Frequent changes. And that often people, as I said, people move here to retire. They get here and then they have a health problem. And then they have to maybe go to they fall and they break a limb, and they have to go to a rehab facility just to work through that. And then they go back home and then something else happens. And then they get into a facility and that facility might close. And they have to go to the parent facility, which is in Charlotte, because that's the only bed that's available. Lots and lots and lots of changes. Lots of changes in staff. We try, and I know that y'all try to keep consistent staffing, but the reality is that's not always the case. And while we try to keep the same workers that come in and work with people, sometimes they have issues that they are not able to continue their job. So there's lots of people that come and go in our loved ones' lives, and that can cause anxiety because they don't know who's coming next. They don't understand what's happening next. So be aware of that. What is there to worry about as an older adult? Well, you're losing your independence. You can't live alone anymore. You have to depend on someone else. You have someone helping you with your finances, someone handling your money. You're isolated from your family and your friends. There's sort of that constant transition of where they never kind of feel like they're settled. Even if they have, this is adult children of aging parents, even if they live with you, that's a transition and a change. And they're having then to fit into your lifestyle and your schedule and be adapted to the way you do things, not the way they've done things for 80 years. Oh, you think that's what it is? Okay.
Sorry.
Now we know. Okay. So, I swear I think I skipped another slide though. Maybe not. All right, we're just going to go get. So if you're one of those, we know that some people just are anxious. We also know that circumstances can make you anxious. We know that constant transition, if there's not sort of a resolution that we feel comfortable with, can make us anxious. So what are some things that we can do to help people who are worriers? These are just some ideas, but I think that we have to realistically understand that there are going to be times of uncertainty. That's just life. So we might want to just say, okay, on Tuesday evening at 6:00, we're going to sit down and we're going to talk about all the things that you're worried about, and we're going to see what we can do to put a plan in place. That sort of gives people a designated time and place to take their concerns. Journaling might help, where they can write down their concerns and bring them to that one time. One of the things that I try to do, because I am the negative self-talk queen, is to challenge these negative thoughts. I can get into my own head quicker than anything. And one of the things I often have to ask myself is, what's the worst that can happen? How bad can this really be? And it sort of helps to ground me. Now, your loved ones may not be able to do that. So then it falls on us to say, well, what happened the last time this happened? You know, remind them of a success. Nobody likes to be reminded of failures and anxieties and insecurities all the time. And we're very quick often as helpers to sort of jump in and say, oh, mama, you can't do that. Remember, you failed last time, mama. Don't go up those steps, mama, because last time you failed. Maybe what we can do is to channel that and say, well, you know, Mom, last time you failed, let me help you up these stairs so that that doesn't happen again. Often, you know, negative self-talk, you get in your head and I can't do it. And for depression particularly, that's one of the issues is I'm just going to give up. What's the use? I'm just that helpless, hopeless, worthless. How helpless is it? How hopeless is it? If we can challenge those negative thoughts, perhaps we can put people in motion to be making some gains to change some things. Self-care is important. We all know the benefits of exercise and proper nutrition and getting enough sleep. The last two, caffeine and sugar and alcohol and nicotine. Number one, alcohol is a depressant. So if you're depressed, drinking alcohol is not going to help. It's really not. It's just that it might make you temporarily, but alcohol is a depressant and it's only going to exacerbate the depressive symptoms. Alcohol, nicotine, caffeine, sugar. One of the things about anxiety is often you have that overwhelming feeling that you need to do something. And there's often not a specific target. There's not a specific trigger. It's just that feeling. And you can't say, oh, I'm feeling anxious today because I've got to do this ACAP presentation on Tuesday afternoon. I'm feeling anxious and I don't know what it is. And I feel like I'm going to jump out of my skin. Caffeine makes that happen. So you give caffeine to someone who's more anxious, you're going to have a very anxious person with lots of energy. So just be aware of things like that. Substances can make it worse. Maybe the lip is not the issue.
Maybe the arrows.
Looky there. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. Can I move it down? No.
Oh, you oh,
Is that going to move this camera? Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah. Okay. So some of the strategies, we know the symptoms of anxiety, recognizing that and getting help, medical help, counseling, support groups as needed. Okay. You can go ahead and scroll down. We talked about a good mental health evaluation, and I will tell you that would sort of be where I'd start just in general. A physician can rule out all sorts of things that I cannot. A physician can test for nutritional deficiencies or vitamin deficiencies or medication side effects. Always start with a medical evaluation.
May I ask?
Absolutely.
Who would you need, rather than a GP, who would you need, a psychiatrist?
Well, I think it depends on sort of the complexity of the case. As I said, I'm a social worker, and I started out as a mental health social worker. So my gut response is maybe you need a psychiatrist anytime there's a mental health diagnosis, but I know that that's probably not realistic. I would say if you feel that your physician understands both what you're saying and what your loved one is saying, if they seem in tune to sort of the whole person, not just the medical thing, and if they seem to be managing the illness okay, I think you're probably okay with a GP. But I think if it gets complicated, or if you start often what happens is, particularly with medications, something will be started and a side effect happens. And so we drop that one and we start something else. And then another side effect happens. And we drop that one and we start something else. And this is our last chance. So we keep you on that one and then we manage the side effects. And then the side effect medication starts causing side effects. And before you know it, you have people on 10, 15 different types of medications. And we're not talking about young, healthy people. We're talking about old, frail, medically fragile people. So I think when it gets to that point, then it's probably time to look at a psychiatrist or a gerontologist. Does that answer your question? Okay. You go ahead and through. If you're wondering, ask the questions. I said that, when we're talking about suicide, don't be afraid to ask the questions. Often for anxiety, this is the only way you're going to come upon it, because anxiety, there's no trigger. Often there's no identifiable trigger. You don't know sort of what's causing it. And often people will describe the feeling, my stomach's all torn up. Oh, my nerves are all torn up. I can't sleep at night. I just don't know. I've been having headaches for a while. I just don't know what's going on. Been to the doctor and they can't tell me anything. Maybe ask some questions. Is there something that you're worried about? Is there something that you can't put out of your mind? Because that's one of the symptoms of anxiety, is sort of those intrusive thoughts, those thoughts that keep coming, and you know that it doesn't make any sense, and you try to tell yourself it doesn't make any sense, but you can't put it out of your mind. Are you having a hard time sleeping? Tell me how you're eating. When I used to work at the mental health center years ago, and I would go in with our clients in to see the psychiatrist, first two questions the doctor asked: tell me how you're eating, tell me how you're sleeping. Because significant changes in appetite patterns and sleep patterns indicate something's going on. It might not be depression, might not be dementia, might be side effects of medication. But those were the first two questions that doctor always asked. So ask people, tell me how you're sleeping. Tell me how you're eating. Or if they're living with you, you observe that. Significant changes from a person's baseline indicate something's going on. Yes, ma'am.
My mom is 96, and I think she's doing really great. But I don't know where paranoia factors into this. Occasionally, I'll hear stories of her putting a chair up to the front door because she's convinced that somebody is banging on her door and walking away. What category do you put that in? Do you look at it as a symptom of something?
Well, you saw that both of these have psychosis, hallucination pieces as far as symptoms. I think it is part of, I think that for me, it sounds like it's part of it. I would look at maybe what is underlying that. Is it a sensory thing? Is at 96, one of the questions you might ask is, does she wear hearing aids?
No, she is becoming a little.
So maybe that might be, maybe she's misinterpreting sounds that she hears. Maybe she's misinterpreting. We often, and we did it with my mom too, to try to keep her rooted in reality. She was a person who kept the television on in the background for noise, just day-to-day noise. But we try to keep it on something like the news, just something that was a little more educational than Judge Wapner or whatever. And the problem with the news is, I don't know if y'all have paid any attention to the news lately. It's not a lot of good stuff. It's not happy stuff. So maybe is she watching television and seeing those things? Is there something those would be the things that I would ask and look into. But it really could be one of the, if you do that investigation and you don't notice anything or nothing, is apparent, then maybe you would ask these questions and say, could it be that you're feeling more anxious about something? Is there something that you feel uneasy about? And maybe she would be able to tell you that.
So it could be a symptom.
Yes. Do you have a hard time putting things out of your mind? That's a good one, of that perseveration of over and over and over. No matter what you do to try to make yourself feel better, it doesn't go away. So ask those questions. Now, as these things come up here, I know that you're going to look at this and you're going to say, I would never say this. I would never say, that's just mean. I would never say that to someone who was having issues. But I'm going to tell you, my mother passed away 10 years ago with dementia. You very much will say them. You very much will. You say you won't, but you will. Things that you can say that sometimes help. You're not alone in this. We're going to figure this out together. I know you don't believe it, but you're not always going to feel this way. You're going to feel better. One of the ones I like to use is the second one from the last one. Tell me right now. Tell me what we can do right now to make you feel better. Sort of grounding them back into the here and now. Tell me what I can do right now. You're important to me. The way you feel is important to me. So what we're trying to do is validate what they're feeling. As I said, and you say you won't say these, but you will. When you walk in and your mother has the same clothes on she's had for 3 days and is refusing to get up out of her chair and to brush her teeth, one of the things you're going to say, because I have said it, is, come on, Mama, snap out of it. You'll feel better if you just get up and brush your teeth. Come on, just do it. Never happens. Never happens. But so be aware of these things. It's not something we can tell people to snap out of. And I think it's interesting to remark on that, because I came from a father who very much was Lee, you better pull yourself up from your bootstraps kind of thing. The way work will set you free. I have 3 older brothers, and you know how teenage boys would get in fights and get in trouble at school. My father's pat answer: that boy needs a boss of him. He needs to join the army. So he was not one of these touchy-feely, process through kind of people. And this was him. This was very much him. What do you mean you don't feel good? Get up. Nobody cares that you don't feel good. Get up and work through it. And while those of us who are not experiencing anxiety or experiencing depression very much understand that, what we also know as clinicians is those things really do help us. Getting up out of bed, brushing your teeth, taking a shower, being active, going outside and getting some sunshine really can change your mood and change your outlook. But berating someone and telling them to snap out, it's not going to happen. So we have to find ways to support people without breaking them down and without making them feel bad. As I said earlier, no one wants to constantly be told, no, you can't do that. Let me do it. I can get it done quicker. We do it all the time to people, to our elders. We take over for them. We take them to doctors and we speak for them. We ask their opinion and then don't act on it. We do it all the time. We need to focus on strengths. Focus on what people are good at. Focus on someone is severely depressed, but they got up and made it to the breakfast table. That's a success. So let's focus on that. Thank you so much for getting up this morning. I'm going to make French toast this morning. Make it a celebration. Really focus on the things that go right, because so much is not going to go right. I think connection with others is just paramount in sort of figuring all this out. One of the advantages in the area that we live in is because this is a retirement area, there are tons of resources. There are tons of senior care agencies that will help at home. The senior centers here are wonderful. I don't know if any of y'all have ever participated in those. Back home, I can tell you, the senior centers kind of felt like a little bit like where old people go and wait for lunch. Here, it's very different. And it's, there's pool and there's exercise classes and there's swimming classes and there's dances and arts and crafts and all kinds of stuff that people can be a part of. So look for connections with others, support groups for y'all who are having to be the caregivers and trying to muddle your way through this. I want to talk just briefly about medications. Before I get into medications, because they can be a little tricky. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Medications can be used to treat both depression and anxiety. What's interesting is generally it's the same medications. Depression is treated now with a class of drugs for the most part. Now, there's always outliers. It's a class of drugs called SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. Serotonin is the brain chemical, the neurotransmitter that's most closely associated with mood. It works with memory, but it's sort of the feel-good chemical. These drugs work by making more of that available to your body to use. And by that then helps the depression lift. They're not pep pills, not something you can take and feel better in a week. Often they take 2 to 3 weeks. In the elderly, it can take 4 to 6 weeks for significant behavioral changes to occur. SNRIs, serotonin norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors, also a class of antidepressant. They work on two chemicals. So you've got serotonin and you've got norepinephrine. Norepinephrine, anybody know what that is? What chemical, what that makes in our body? Adrenaline. It's the chemical that, when you pull out in front of a car and they hit the brakes and the horn and your heart's, that's norepinephrine. That's what causes that fight, flight, or fright response. All humans are hardwired to respond to stressful situations in 1 to 3 ways: fight, flight, or fright. But what causes that is the neurotransmitter norepinephrine. So the medications, the SNRIs are generally tried if the SSRIs don't work. There's a few more side effects with the SNRIs because it affects two of the chemicals. Excuse me. But for the most part, these two classes of drugs are fairly easy on people. They don't cause a lot of nasty side effects that some of the old medications did. We have some mental health medications that can cause some really nasty side effects. For the most part, these don't. They can cause some upset stomach issues. Some people will say they cause some tingling in their fingers and their legs. Generally, it goes away once your body gets accustomed to the levels. So these drugs are very, very, probably about the most commonly prescribed mental health drugs that we have. There are some older classifications of drugs that you might be familiar with that are used that have been used to treat anxiety in particular: Valium, Ativan, Klonopin, Xanax. There's another one I can't remember. They're a class of drugs called benzodiazepines. Those drugs are not used much anymore for lots of reasons. Number one is they're addicting. And number two, not only are they addicting, but you build up a tolerance to them over time. So it takes more and more of the drug to cause the same therapeutic effect. The problem comes in is that even though you build up a tolerance to, you can overdose on them, and these medications can be deadly. For the most part, physicians will begin to try to change a person to these newer meds that I was talking about to get them off of the Valiums and things. But I tell you this because you can't just stop taking a benzo. it's almost like an alcoholic who goes into DTs. You'll have significant withdrawal. People can have significant withdrawal, can go into seizures, and people have died from that. So it's a very, if someone has been on one of the benzos for a period of time and is being followed up by a physician, probably what that means is that the physician feels that their health status is so precarious that they don't want to run the risk of causing issues by taking them off of it. So I always hear people say, well, my mom's been on Valium for 25 years, and should we get her off of it? Well, probably at 25 years, you really need to be working with your physician and having that discussion, because it's not something that you should just suddenly take upon yourself to stop the medicines, and it can be quite serious if you do.
What are some of the newer medications?
Okay, the SSRIs, the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, Celexa, Lexapro, Luvox, Paxil, Prozac. There's another couple. They're sort of the ones you know, Paxil, Prozac, Lexapro are sort of the ones that we think about. The SNRIs, it just left me. Cymbalta, Effexor, Remeron. There's one that starts with a P. I think it's like Prestige. And then there's a couple of others that I don't know the name of. But they're, for the most part, they're what we think about. We've heard the names of these meds. Just know that those Valiums and those Ativans and those Klonopins, often those meds are used for behavioral control as well. The benzos, we give them, they're anti-anxiety meds, but often they're used to help people who are sort of acutely agitated. My mother had a standing order for an Ativan at 2:00 in the afternoon because 2:00 in the afternoon she would start sundowning, and that was sort of what she needed. But they can be just very, very, very dangerous. So just, you know, treat them with the kid gloves that you feel like you should. That you need to monitor them very carefully. Do y'all have any questions, comments? This is sort of the time. This is all the information I have, but I am certainly open for questions and want this to be what you. Yes, ma'am.
At what point and why do you go from a GP to a gerontologist?
The question was, when do you just make the decision to go from a GP to a gerontologist? And I think it goes back to what I was just talking about, the idea of a psychiatrist versus a GP. I think that there are some people who age very gracefully, and my mother-in-law is one of them. You mentioned that your mother was 96. My mother-in-law is 95, and she can work circles around me. The woman is healthier than I am, and you know, she could be up here doing this program. In her case, she probably, and she is followed by her general practitioner. She doesn't have any outstanding complex medical conditions. She was 92 years old before she ever took medication. So she takes one medication. Yeah, exactly. So I think that when you start adding multiple meds for multiple conditions, maybe when the medical conditions get to the point where you're having to add multiple specialists. To me, a gerontologist sort of handles everything. That's sort of the hub from which everything else flows when you reach that complex point. And that would be my answer, my short answer. Do y'all have any ideas?
I think sometimes too that the GP is so familiar with that person that they'll not really dig any further. And especially with some of the older folks, they don't want to say that they're depressed. That's like taboo.
Right.
So then I think if you keep saying symptoms, and you may need to investigate, get a referral. Do they have any assessment places, geriatric assessment places around here?
UNC Wilmington has a program.
Gerontology.
Yeah.
Of course, and lots of people are taking that now.
Right. But there's what is,
What's Rudick's word?
I know the name of it, but I can't think of
What
it.
is the group that you said?
Dr. Rudick's group is Senior Health Associates, and that's a conglomerate of geriatricians.
Mhm.
And that the good news is they specialize in older adult. A GP is great. I love my GP, but when you specialize in older adults, older adult complications, older adult losses, body
Interactions.
systems changing. I mean, there's a lot that Dr. Rudick is exceptional in her practice because she studied for so long. Marsha Fretwell was another name that was with us forever, and she was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And
She's
these,
retired, hasn't she?
she did. And these ladies were pioneers because they were women in a man's field for decades, and they led the charge. Right now, Dr. Rudick is the geriatrician in town. If you want,
And you can't get an appointment with her.
correct, because it's a retirement community.
Right.
Yep.
But one of the things you were mentioning about the differences between adult systems and older adult systems is like dosing of medications. If someone is not familiar with the way an adult body metabolizes substances, effectively you can overdose someone. Often, particularly back, like I say, when I used to work at the mental health center, we'd start people off on pediatric doses. And, it's when you're talking about the hare and the tortoise, we are very much the tortoise in this. We don't want to get people on meds and quickly increase the dosage. We want to gradually work it up to give them a chance for their bodies to adapt to it.
Start low and go slow.
Start low and go slow. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Do you want to share some about Trillium?
Well, I can. As it says here, I actually did not work for Trillium. We're a contract agency with Trillium. Trillium is what used to be the mental health center. And now what they have done is to provide more choice and more providers for people. We've contracted out services to various providers. It used to be you could go to the mental health center and you could see a psychiatrist and you could have a case manager and you could be in a support group. Now what they do is they have sort of farmed those out to community agencies. And the company that I work for is called Therapeutic Alternatives. We provide the geriatric specialty team. But there's that first number, that's the main number. There's a screening triage number. So you can call. They will go through a phone screening with you, assess what's going on, and then, if appropriate, make a referral to another community partner to provide follow-up. They do have a mobile crisis number, just like us. It's a contract, just like Therapeutic Alternatives. It's a contract agency. The good thing about that mobile crisis number is that's open to anyone. Doesn't matter if you have insurance or not. Doesn't matter if you can pay or not. Doesn't matter if you are a relative. It doesn't matter if you're a resident of this area. It doesn't matter. Anyone can call that mobile crisis number. And the general time, it's like a call line. There's someone who will answer the call, do a phone screening. I think the time frame is 30 minutes. They have 30 minutes from the time you call them they will call you back if they don't answer right away, and sort of do a phone screening to see what's going on. If, say, someone needs to be hospitalized, particularly on an involuntary commitment, the good thing about the mobile crisis team, if they need to, they will come out to do a face-to-face. They determine that someone, say, needs to go to the hospital on an involuntary commitment. What they can do is they can go to the magistrate and they can take out the papers. And therefore, you don't have to leave your loved one. You can stay there with them. What it also means is that you don't have to have the sheriff call. Used to be if you had to commit someone, the sheriff would have to come, and it was often a traumatic process because people would have to be taken in the police car, and it was just a mess. The mobile crisis team can do that. Now, I'm not saying that if you call them, they do screen out some things. So I'm not saying that if you call them, they will 100% respond and give you what you want, but it might be a resource that will help you. So that's a good one to use. And then there's my information. I do programs like this pretty much anywhere. I started out in facilities, in nursing homes and rest homes, and doing these programs for the staff, but we can come to community groups like this. We can come to churches. We can come. I met Marianne at a support group meeting. So I have left some information over on the end of the purple table. I've got a little brochure about our program, my business card. Even if you don't think you'll need it, I'll come and do a women's club meeting if you've got if you need a speaker. So our goal is to sort of try to educate people on geriatric mental health issues. So we'll do it anywhere, anytime. If you need anything, here's my card. Pick it up and give me a call. Do y'all have any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
A copy of your presentation?
As far as I'm concerned, you can. They have it. Would y'all be able to send that to them? Okay. Yes, they can send that to you. If they couldn't, I can. But I thought since they already have it, it might be easier. Any other questions?
Question about, it seems like a lot of times dealing with other people, the whole HIPAA situation, if they don't give you permission, they're starting with dementia and stuff, and it's jumping through those hurdles.
It is jumping through those hurdles. That's one reason why I would say, when at all possible, go to every single appointment. Be there when they sign those releases of information. Because you're exactly right. If you're not there and that name's not on file and you call, they're not going to give you the information. I also will tell you, just because I went through this with both of my parents, older people are not historically good historians, if that makes any sense. And so my mother and father, when they were able to go on their own to the doctor, they would go in and they'd come out and what'd they tell you? Oh, they said, we're doing good. No problem, we're good. And then when we started going with them, we sat down and I don't want the physician to talk to me. That's ageism. They need to be talking to the person that they are treating. But it used to just blow my mind, because we would have a list of stuff that we knew. My mom had dementia. We knew things were happening, and we were, this is what we're concerned about. This is what she's lost weight. We're concerned about all this stuff. They'd say, Miss Cooper, tell me how you're doing. I'm good. I cooked the other day, and we had the best meal, and all my family comes to see me, and I've got a garden, and you're like, who is this woman? What did you do with my mama? So I think it's real important to go to those appointments. I think the more that you're visible there, the more likely they will include you. I know now there's the option for telehealth, and that may or may not complicate things. I'm not sure. Do they allow telehealth appointments to have another person there with you? I don't. Sometimes I guess it depends on the physician.
Depends on the doctor.
Yeah.
The neurologist allowed you to.
I think it's as much educating the physicians that you really are invested, and you really are the person there.
They'll ask them, and you hope they say yes.
Yes, but
if they say no.
Yeah, the reality is, if they say no, it's going to probably be no, unless you have guardianship or healthcare power of attorney.
You can get a standalone HIPAA authorization form too, and usually elder law attorneys that specialize in that can prepare those, and then you have one document that you can provide to any physician or any medical facility and say, here we go.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, elderly people will say, oh yes, on this one, but then the next one, they totally forget, that Susie, comes to these appointments or wants to know things. So it's kind of nice to have one. that transfer.
The sort of pre-drawn up agreement, absolutely.
Yeah, the earlier you do the paperwork for that.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, you don't have capacity, of course, the person needs to have capacity and be able to legally sign the documents, but yeah, absolute option for that too.
Seems like when, as they get older, they hear what they want to hear,
Yes.
at doctor's appointments also. Extrapolate.
And the reality is, I don't know, recently I haven't been to a doctor, but they get 5 minutes. You got a lot to get across in 5 minutes.
And the portals are great. If you can get on
The patient portals.
the patient portals and you're in, because, yeah, I do that because my husband forgets to tell them things. So I'm like, before his appointments, I'm telling the doctor what he needs to know.
Yeah, and like the my chart things, and they will allow you to designate someone to have access to that. So that might be something to pursue. Those are hard for older people sometimes to navigate. You'll probably have to set it up for them.
But it definitely seems like the nurses and the doctors prefer the My Chart.
Yes.
Mhm.
It depends on the practice, but you get a response a lot faster.
Yep. Anything else? Thank y'all. Thank you for your patience with the.
Thank you so much, Julie. Did a great job and dealt with our little remote issues. I'm not sure. Maybe we need new batteries. I'm not sure what that is.
I'm sure it's big.
We'll figure it out. First thing is just want to make sure you know what our next program is going to be, and that is January 10th. And it's going to be on Trip of a Lifetime, Preventing Falls by Aging Loved Ones. I know working in home care, the things that we see the most are dementia and then people that come to us because of a fall. And so it's a great opportunity to kind of learn what are the things to look at in your home, what are the things, balance issues, just all the different things to consider to try to prevent falls in your loved ones. I'm sorry? Cats.
and rugs.
Little dogs. Jeff Weisler of Wrightsville Beach Physical Therapy is going to be our presenter for that. So January 10th, and that'll be same place, same time. And there is a schedule, the one that has the purple at the top for the first quarter. So you can see what our next 3 presentations are going to be. And we always ask you to do the feedback form. 2 questions, if you don't mind adding to that, is how did you find out about us and what zip code are you in? That's just helpful for us to know for where people are hearing about us. And I think several of you are on our email list. If you want to get an email with the invitation for each month, you can fill out this form and leave that on the table. And then you had mentioned getting the PowerPoint. On the back of the wrap card, our email address is katefear@acapcommunity.org. If you want to get the PowerPoint, if you can send an email to that and just say, hey, please send me the PowerPoint from the December presentation, we'll get that sent to you. Otherwise, the email list is for the actual invitations. Let me check if there's anything else I needed to say. Yeah, just any of the information on there. We have some resources from past events. So if you have not been to all the events and you want to check that out, I think there's some from SHIP about insurance, prescriptions. Julie has some of her information there. So help yourself to any of that, any of the snacks. And since you came out in December, I know this is a busy month for everyone. I have a door prize for whoever's birthday is closest to Christmas, because I know you have to share your birthday with a holiday. So is anyone?
Y'all just might as well give it to me.
Oh.
I got it.
Wait, is it Christmas Day?
Oh, see.
No way. Is anybody on Christmas Day? Okay, then Julie gets
No. I'm just here to give it to the next person.
Okay, whoever's
I need to tell y'all
closest but not Christmas Eve. Is anyone's between November 25th and January 25th? No. Anyone between October 25th and February 25th? Okay. Merry Christmas and happy almost birthday.
Well, thank you.
So, all right. Well, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everybody. And hopefully we'll see you January 10th. For the New Year, we would love to have more people come, and we have such great speakers and information. So If you can bring a friend next time, that would be great. And we appreciate you coming. Thank you.
Thank y'all so much. Sorry about that. Oh, okay.
So I'm at Elder House Home, and I'm going to take care
She's on my team. Yeah, she's one of our best there. So she's in there. But I can help too, so. Yeah, that's great, thank you.
Yes.
No, I'm with Griswold Home Care, and then Julie said we're not contract. I don't think we have anyone here that's with Griswold. Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think anybody is. I didn't find out about, I know you put it on the front, but. Okay. Well, great. Yeah, that's what you do. Oh, wow. Okay. So she's brand new.
No, you weren't. It's not always a thing that goes back. Oh, I was. I
can't always do it in another status. Right. I felt very disjointed, so I was totally involved. The people who are watching our home can't see your screen, they can There we go. Well, that's interesting. It's like, all of the things. Well, and I can't always put a drop of a hat. Yes, that's what.
Yeah, I help with the that winter park every Wednesday. We have and then care receivers. We, myself, my business partner, and Andrew, my husband, receivers. So we just entertain them for 2 hours. But they're always
If not me, they're tenure. We work hard now, history, so we lost 20 hours. You know anybody who wants to really? I wouldn't. That was full time, but it's like a part-time job. I'm predominantly runs the morning. I'm going to dinner tomorrow, and part of that is because we're downstairs. Kay's not great. That's a right.
Oh my gosh, well, thank you. No, I appreciate you coming out. It's a good.
Scott, is this thick one ours or does this belong
That's what I
to?
said.
Dang,
What did I
turbo order?